I'm Edward October, host of OctoberPod, and you're listening to a special multi-part series by A Nefarious Nightmare called Minding the Beehive. Before we begin, we felt it our responsibility to issue a stern warning. This series serves as a deep dive exploration into the attacks committed by a serial rapist. This will include detailed first-hand accounts from the victims of this assailant. While this series is meant to raise awareness and inspire vigilance, we do understand that such content may trigger painful emotions for certain individuals. Listener discretion is therefore very strongly advised.
I thought I was good in the beginning. I did. I thought it was fine. I just realized that it has affected me in my life in general. Talking to a new guy who is amazing and makes me feel very comfortable, I ended up doing the same thing with this guy in my bed, and this was the first time that I had done anything like sexual since Adrian, when I was trying to be intimate with somebody else. Even though I felt very safe and I felt like this was what I wanted to do, I still ended up having a panic attack afterwards. My whole body just shaking and convulsing, and it just brought me back to that moment. I wasn't really that affected by it at first, but I think I mostly didn't realize what happened. And then to find out that he is a serial rapist who gets off on people who freaking out or crying or who are struggling, like that's what he gets off on. That's when things kind of started hitting me more. And then just reliving it. Now I'm just reliving it. And I'm now having to deal with these memories of something that I didn't want happening to me. And I'm trying to move on from that, and just in new relationships having to go back and relive that. It sucks that I'm stuck with these memories. I'm stuck with these feelings. All of us are stuck with these feelings. And he's out there just doing whatever the fuck he wants, getting a new girl to feel the way that we do. And that's what made me want to do whatever the fuck I could to get him in jail. Like, it's just not fair. And I just feel so bad for all these other women and the things that he did to them.
Last week, we heard Tatum's story and briefly gave an overview on sexual abuse and sexual assault awareness.
This week, we will be listening to our final reenactment of a text, which ties into the story of Haley, who was not only a victim, but also willingly acted as a sting operator. With that, I'm Courtney Fenner.
And I'm Amanda Cronin. And A Nefarious Nightmare presents Minding the Beehive, Surviving a Serial Rapist, Part 5. At this point, you're all likely well-versed into the general complexities of narcissism and have a pretty good idea of what to be aware of when faced with a situation where sexual assault or abuse could occur.
You also likely have a pretty good idea of who Adrian is, what all he's done, and how many people this has affected. On top of what the victims have gone through, we also have to remember that in some cases, this affects the families of these victims as well.
Having lived through sexual assault can continue on to various issues in life. In general, mental health, but to dive in further, PTSD, issues with relationships, issues with trust, feelings of guilt, disassociation, sleep issues, trouble with intercourse, in some cases trouble with the law, trouble with parenting, new addictions, body dysmorphia, in some cases Stockholm Syndrome, imposter syndrome, to name a few, and in severe cases, suicidal ideation or worse.
And, many victims will question their role in what has happened to them, such as, did I wear the wrong thing? Was it because I was drunk? Did I ask for it by the way I was dressed or smiled, or did I ask for it because I willingly entered into a relationship with this person? I want to make this very clear. The biggest answer to those questions and many more, it is not your fault. The role you played, you didn't even play a role. To suggest that you played a role suggests a willingness. You were not willing and you were not complicit. You were simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. You were taken advantage of, and you were not at fault by any means.
When any kind of trauma occurs, it's normal to feel guilt. There's actually something called survivor's guilt, which has been mentioned a number of times in many true crime cases. One definition of survivor's guilt is where a deeply traumatic and heinous act occurs, whether it be rape or murder, and the victim lives to tell the story. The victim feels intense guilt that the heinous act has occurred with others in a more severe way, and the survivor wonders why it didn't happen to them, and sometimes even wishes it did. The survivor often feels that they don't deserve their survival, but we want you to know, you do deserve your survival as much as everyone does. Yes, it may be easier said than done not to feel guilty, which is fine. As Holly says in part 1, allow yourself to process those feelings, but please know that you are not the perpetrator, nor could you have known this would happen to anyone else.
And further, not only could you have never been able to read the perpetrator's thoughts and plans, but the fact that you came forward to tell your story and do your part to raise awareness, that speaks volumes. Everyone who's endured what you have is amazing and strong, and those who tell their story and raise awareness, those who advocate, are fucking heroes.
To break up the tension, because this series is heavy, here's a quick dad joke. We have the Me Too movement, but the ladies of this series have started the B2 movement.
Yes, the hashtag B2 movement. Let's make that a thing, please. I've even added the bee emoji to our names on Instagram and Twitter. If I can get away with it, I'll add it everywhere. We always need to mind the bees and save the bees, because when you fuck with the hive, you get the swarm.
Before we continue, let's listen to this reenactment of a text between a Sting and Adrian.
Sorry for the late replies, honey. It's been crazy at work. Our internet has been down and we are all scrambling. But seriously, that is crazy. I hope nothing happens to you.
It's okay. I know you're busy, honey. I'm off tomorrow. I know you are too. Would you like to come over after work? It's very crazy and I'm a bit scared.
I'm too tired to come tonight, hun. I just got home from work. It was fucking crazy. I hope you're doing okay. I took some cute Valentine's Day pics for you. Do you want to see?
Of course I want to see. Are you coming in the morning then?
At this point, there's an image shown of two females. One of them is holding a sign that says, with hearts and emojis all over it, says, "Happy Valentine's Day, honey," and both of the females are flipping the bird. One of the females is the Sting that he's speaking to, and the other one is his latest victim.
You don't know how to treat people with respect. You don't know how to think about anything but yourself. You have destroyed these women and scarred them for life by doing everything you have done. Do you understand that? Do you understand that your actions and your decisions were life-altering to these women? I felt the red flags in that first phone call we had, but I ignored them because I felt so bad that you were in the same situation as I was in just a year ago. Or so I thought. You knew how to use me and get me to do what you wanted by manipulating and lying. You made me feel uncomfortable and used. You triggered me and didn't give a shit. And all of that is nothing in comparison to what you have done to others. I hope you take a long, hard look at yourself and realize you are not the victim, and you never have been. You are an alcoholic. You are an abuser. You are a rapist. And I hope you get what you deserve in life.
I hope you're okay and keep my personal information to yourself. I've confided in you and you can't believe everything you read. I thought I could trust you, and this is truly heartbreaking. It just goes to show you can't really trust anyone, and it really sucks. Please keep my information, my personal information, to yourself. I've been nothing but sweet and nice. She won? No.
No what?
I was always sweet to you. Remember that. I've confided in you and you are taking a side, I see. Which is fine, I'm not mad, but the time you spent with me, you can see that's not who I am at all. People love to get together and bash, which is fine. I've left everyone alone, but seems I have a fan club. Probably because I am attractive, which is totally fine, but move on. I have a very high respect for women. I have a little sister and I love my mother and she raised me right. I have a lot of girlfriends that speak very highly of me on how sweet I am. For every 10, there's 50 that have my back. So no, I don't need the ridicule, and for you to team up with someone I confided in you about is beyond me because I considered you a good friend. Can't trust anyone, so please keep my personal information to yourself. My number, my address, because I am getting death threats, and I'm doing my best.
So, now that y'all have listened to that reenactment, I want to mention that the person that was the sting is actually Haley, who is the topic of today's episode.
Originally, we thought that Haley's story only started as a sting. After this interview, we found out that Haley was impacted far more by these testimonies than we could ever imagine, because she too was one of his victims. She too was coerced by Adrian into doing things that she didn't want to do. Here's Haley's story.
My name is Haley. I am 28 years old. I was 27 when this took place. This took place at my house in Phoenix, Arizona. So I met Adrian through a Facebook dating app. And when I first met him, I mean, everything seemed fairly normal. He obviously was like really hurting, or it seems like he was. And I mean, everything was pretty normal and like relaxed at first. It was just really chill. Things seemed too weird. I was attracted to his pictures, but in person, even when I first initially met him, he kind of almost made it a point to either keep his hair in his face, or his hands are always around his face, just kind of covering it up. So even the first time I met him, I didn't really get the best look at him. And like, even I went there at night when I first initially met him, and like it was just dark, and he just made it a point to hide his face. So it took me a little bit to realize that, like, oh shoot, like, was this the same person that I was talking to in the pictures or not? Honestly, I felt like he kind of stayed the same throughout. It was more like my realization of my like comfortableness with him. It wasn't because he truly was someone inviting or comfortable to be around. It was more like his embodiment of a person was my normal. So like, I'm used to the narcissist. I'm used to those kinds of people. So to me, that felt comfortable. So I think it's more like he's been the same. It's always been like whiny baby, you know, whatever. But it's been more me kind of realizing like his tactics, and that again, it wasn't the comfortability of his personality. It was like that narcissism that was comfortable to me. So originally I was actually interested in like getting to know him and dating and whatnot. But he slowly kind of led me on to like what was happening between him and Holly. And then I kind of realized who he was and what he had done. And I had found all of the posts that Holly and Parthena and Hannah had posted. And then I reached out to Holly and essentially offered to continue talking to him and kind of get as much information or like do whatever I could to help out Holly in her situation. He definitely had some red flags from the beginning. I mean, number one, just he went straight into talking about his ex and what was going on, and obviously saying much different things of what the truth was, but just automatically going straight into like, you know, victim mode. And I mean, so for me, well, I know I'm trying to think about it, because for me personally, like, even with like, he didn't love bomb me really. I felt like my situation with him was just slightly different. His tactics with me were slightly different, in the fact that like I had been in a like manipulative, narcissistic relationship before, and my ex had taken advantage of me financially right after my dad died. So like I was already so familiar with that aspect. But anyways, like his tactics with me were so different that he was using my past relationship to get to me rather than like the love bombing and trying to get straight into the relationship that way, or like even like sexually, or like he wasn't asking me for nudes or anything like that. Like he didn't go that route with me. He was mostly just using my sympathy and my empathy to then get me to do whatever he wanted. I had only known him as Adrian Esteban, and he only gave me that when he asked me for money, and he gave me his Venmo, and his Venmo said Adrian Esteban. I know that he's used Adrian Gray, Adrian Steven, Adrian Esteban, and his real name is Adrian Vildusea. So I gave in and gave him money one time. Like I said before, I was already in a past relationship where he very much abused my givingness, I guess, and would take a lot of money from me. So I told Adrian from the beginning that I am not comfortable with giving him money. Like, it's just a boundary of mine. So the very first time he asked me for money, I think I gave him $10 or $15. And then he asked me again, maybe 3 days later. And I said, no, this is not okay with me. This is a boundary of mine. I already explained my previous relationship to you, and I'm not going to repeat this. So this is a firm boundary of mine. And he did ask me several times afterwards for money, but I just kept on saying no. The earliest victims that he has goes back like 10 years ago. So I would assume that he has been doing this even longer. So my story essentially starts right when Holly's story leaves off. I started talking to him at the airport when Holly kicked him out. And he just told me that he was in Maryland just visiting a friend. And I didn't really press more into it. So he asked to call me, and we ended up talking on the phone for maybe 6 to 8 hours. He pretty much had me on the phone the entire time he was waiting at the airport. And we were just talking about normal things. And even throughout that conversation, he slowly started to let me know why he was in Maryland, that he was there for a girl. And then I'm not sure if that same day on the phone or the next time we met up, he had finally mentioned that Holly was claiming that he had raped her. And of course, I at first was just believing him and was like, oh yeah, this girl's obviously just crazy because this guy seems very nice on the phone. And I believed him and decided to meet up with him. And I live in Phoenix. He lives in Tucson. So I drove 2 hours to go meet him. And he had asked me so many times to come and drive to him. And I was never really that comfortable with the idea. But he was very, very, very persistent about asking. He would ask all the time, and he would make it a point to say, like, I'm really not doing well. Like, he wouldn't explicitly say, like, I'm going to kill myself, but he was obviously making it a point that he is doing so terrible and that he needs somebody with him right now. And me being the sensitive person I am, I was like, okay, yeah, okay. So then I drove there. I want to say 3 days after he attacked Holly, I met him, and I went to his house after work. So I drove there at 11 p.m. at night and probably got there around 1 a.m. And that first interaction that we had was fine. I mean, nothing happened then. We just kind of hung out, and we did end up having like consensual sex that night. And then we just, I don't even think, I don't remember if he told me about the rape scenario on the phone or if it was this meeting when he told me. I can't quite remember. But that, again, I believed whatever he said. I had to go to work the next morning, so I left really abruptly the next day. And then the next week, he again was asking me over and over again to come and see him pretty much every single day, and I couldn't drive out. But the next week, he asked to come stay with me. And I live with my mom, and I wasn't really comfortable with that idea again. But once again, he was being very, very pushy, and he would ask me over and over again, please, like, I just need somewhere to stay. I just need somebody, please just, like, can I please just stay with you for a couple days? And so I gave in and said, okay, I'll ask if you can come for a day. And my mom was not comfortable with the idea of having him stay for more than a day. Actually, I didn't even let her know that he was coming over because I had asked her if he could stay for several days, and she wasn't okay with that at all. And then I ended up just going over there and bringing him over. My original plan was just to have him over for the day and take him back that same night so that he wasn't staying at my house. Right when I mentioned the idea of like him leaving or me taking him back home, his whole demeanor just switched. He had been, hold on, I feel like I need to restart that part. I didn't tell when we got to my house and stuff. So the next week he wanted to come to my house, and I ended up driving there again after work at around 11 p.m. I stayed the night at his house, and everything was fine then. Nothing too strange. And then the next morning we headed back to my house, which my plan was to just have him there for the day. Afterwards just drive him back home so that he didn't spend the night at my house. That morning, he asked to go to like Circle K, and we got some wine before we went back to my house. I don't drink, so I wasn't drinking anything. And he had just got maybe 3 boxes of wine, and he just slowly became more drunk, and I became more uncomfortable the more drunk he became. And I was just starting to feel the same way I did with my ex. It just felt, I started to feel really anxious and feel really weird, and I just felt like I wanted him to leave, and I wasn't feeling okay. So we were sitting outside of my house. He was smoking a cigarette, and I had mentioned like, hey, maybe in like 2 hours or so, we can start heading back to your place because I have to work tomorrow morning, and I don't want to have to drive like from Tucson to Phoenix in the morning for work. And his demeanor completely changed at that point. Like his whole face, just everything, the feeling, his energy, it was flipped in an instant. And he was going from being nice to like, didn't say a word, was just staring at me. And then he started going off saying, because I had taken a couple of dabs because I don't drink, I smoke weed. And he kept just saying over and over again, like, you're way too fucked up to be driving. You cannot be doing anything. If you're going to go and drive, you're going to get a DUI. You're going to crash and kill people. And when the cops here or get there, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to be an accomplice. He just kept going on. yelling at me, saying all these things over and over again. And it just triggered. I have PTSD from my last relationship, and it just triggered me. So while he was just continuing to go on, his voice is getting louder and louder. And then I just keep saying, okay, I'm sorry. I just start sobbing. My whole body is shaking. I'm like, okay, like whatever you need, we won't go. We'll stay here, whatever you want to do. Okay. And then he would just continue talking about it. And I'm like, I said, okay, we will do what you want. Okay, like, let's go inside. We're fine. And then I want to say not even 5 minutes after we went inside, we went and laid down, and he, like I said, about 5 minutes after I just was sobbing, shaking, having a full-blown panic attack in front of him, he starts kissing me, and then he grabs my hand and puts it down on his penis and obviously wants me to do stuff. I didn't really want to, but I didn't want to deal with him triggering me again. So I just went through and did that. And then in the middle of me giving him a blowjob, I got up and went to my bathroom to go cry because I just felt awful. And when I came back, I tried to just lay down and try to make it obvious that I did not want to do this. And he just got huffy and puffy and obviously was upset that I didn't finish the job. And then I just looked up at him and said, okay, do you want me to finish then? And then he's like, only if you want to. So then I did, because again, I didn't want him to react. And then I just sat there and waited until the next day, until everything was okay, until I could get him out of my house. And then I don't know. I didn't speak to him for a little bit. Even after that, I didn't know, all of the allegations against him quite yet. I still only knew what he had told me. And I kind of just didn't think that much about that experience and was like, whatever, moving on. And I continued to talk to him for a little bit more until that was the last time I saw him. But I kept talking to him for a little bit longer. And then I want to say a week after that, he called me and told me that Holly posted a TikTok about him. And that was his big mistake. And I'm on TikTok 24/7. So I did my darndest. He had sent me one screenshot of Holly's OnlyFans while he was being a jerk about all of that. And so the only thing I knew was that her name was Holly from her OnlyFans page that he had sent me. And I knew that his name was Adrian Esteban from his Cash App or Venmo. So I just kept on looking up sexual assault, Holly, Adrian, and just as many different things as I possibly could until I finally found the video. And then that's when I ended up reaching out to Holly and telling her hey, I'm currently talking to this guy. Thank you so much for putting this out there, because I was supposed to go back to his house that night to meet him again. And I know that if I went to his house, that would have been the time that he would have done something even more extreme. So I am just so eternally grateful to them for speaking out and posting all these things for people to find. And then that's when I asked Holly if she wanted me to continue talking to him. And I did for a couple weeks longer. Yeah. I didn't think that what happened was affecting me very much. I mostly was just feeling so grateful for, or towards Holly and all the other girls for posting about it, that I just felt grateful that something worse didn't happen to me. So I thought I was good in the beginning. I did. I thought it was fine. And then I actually just last week was I just realized that it has affected me in my life in general. I am talking to a new guy who is amazing and makes me feel very comfortable. And I ended up doing the same thing with this guy in my bed. And this was the first time that I had done anything like sexual since Adrian. And I didn't think that anything would come up. But when I was trying to be intimate with somebody else, even though I felt very safe and I felt like this was what I wanted to do, I still ended up having a panic attack afterwards. My whole body just shaking and convulsing, and it just brought me back to that moment. And again, I didn't think that it was doing much to me, and I wasn't really that affected by it at first, but I think I mostly didn't realize what happened. And then to find out that he is a serial rapist who gets off on people who, who are like freaking out or crying or who are struggling, like that's what he gets off on, for him to then make me panic and cry and sob, and then to want to have sexual relations 5 minutes after that. Like that's what it ended up getting me afterwards, and just kind of really sitting there realizing and knowing his intentions at that point. That's when things kind of started hitting me more, and then just reliving it. Now I'm just reliving it. And now I actually messaged Holly the other night, just enraged, just like, again, I feel like my story isn't the worst of it. And I'm now having to deal with these memories of something that I didn't want happening to me. And I'm trying to move on from that. And just in new relationships, having to go back and relive that. It sucks that I'm stuck with these memories. I'm stuck with these feelings. All of us are stuck with these feelings. And he's out there just doing whatever the fuck he wants, getting a new girl to feel the way that we do. And that's what made me want to do whatever the fuck I could to get him in jail. Like, it's just not fair. And I just feel so bad for all these other women and the things that he did to them. And it just hurts so much. And I can't even imagine, like, the little thing that he did to me. I can't even imagine what these other girls are feeling like. It just hurts so much. Dude, it is nuts. Some of my family knows. I told, the family members that I'm closer with, like my sister and my cousin, I told them in more detail of what happened. And of course, I think as most women, unfortunately, I think we almost can all share some sort of story like this. So, they obviously, understood what I was saying or knew where I was coming from, and they could relate. That's the word. But I didn't end up really telling my mom for many reasons. Number one, she doesn't even really know that Adrian was even in my house. I didn't tell her that he was there, and we were just in my room, so I don't really even know if she really knew he was there. And I just didn't want to really worry her or get too into detail. I let her know that I was talking to a guy and this is what he had done. But any person I have told about this situation, they all are just like, oh my God, this sounds like a Lifetime movie. Like, this doesn't sound real. This sounds insane. How is this guy still out there? So the Beehive is essentially just the collection of, unfortunately, Adrian Vilducea's victims, almost victims, who thankfully found each other and decided to work together to, try to make something happen. And basically, we just have a group chat of all these amazing women who are victims, who were almost victims, who are friends of victims. And we all basically just go in there to, vent and talk about, it's essentially a safe place for all of us, and we are just trying to do as much work as we can to get Adrian.Vukovich name out there so that any new victim, any new person that may come in contact with him will see his face, and anywhere they type his name, any of his 5 million aliases, they're going to find him, and we're doing our best to make sure that we get him. I definitely feel like we have a really deep bond and connection with each other. And we've all said this a million times to each other. It's the most unfortunate circumstances, but, just such an amazing thing at the same time, to have this collection of amazing women who are all there for each other, who have all gone through similar things. And it's just, especially to have that bond with the same exact perpetrator. I don't know, it's just, I will forever have these women in my life, and we share just so much of our stories together that I just don't think that we'll ever be able to forget about each other or get out of each other's lives, honestly. It's very obvious that he has a type, which definitely is more of the alternative, goth, emo, e-girl, whatever the heck. If it's more alternative, he seems to be into it. I know some of the other girls have mentioned that he loves using the hashtag girls with tattoos. Every single person that follows him or that you see him liking pictures of, they are using the hashtag girls with tattoos. So it's very much, he's looking for an alternative type. Honestly, I have my own conspiracy theory almost on why he likes alternative women, at least for myself. I feel like a lot the alternative or goth type of people, I think they a lot of the time have the connotation of having mental disorders, almost having depression, being really anxious or bipolar. And I think maybe in that way he thinks that they could be easily manipulated. And obviously I'm not saying every single alternative person has mental health issues, but I think a lot of us could say in a way we do. That's almost what I think about it. He does, I feel like, have some sort of power trip. Obviously, he likes being, I don't know. Oh my God, I can't think of any words. I could definitely see him wanting to gain some sort of power in a way from the alt community. I never really thought about it that way, but it does kind of make sense for him to think of them as almost on a pedestal or something that he would want to be or become, since he always brings up the fact that he was in that band, which he wasn't. But I think that whole cool aspect of it is what he likes. And yeah, I could definitely see him wanting to take over that because he's jealous in a way or wants to be that. I can see that happening. I just want any of the listeners out there who have been through anything like this, even just the narcissistic aspect of it, not even the sexual assault of this whole awful story. I just want all of you out there to know that you are not alone. There are so many people out there, strangers that are there for you. We are all here for you. The bees are here for you. I just want, like Holly said, I really do just want to hug every single woman because, like I said, I feel like my story is nothing in comparison to some of these other women's stories. And that has what he has done to me has affected my life so much now. And I just can't even imagine what other people who have gone through so much more are feeling. And I just want you to know that I'm here for you. I love you. This is only a temporary thing. You will get through all of it. So just sad. All I hope for is for Adrian to go to jail. So anything to get his name out there and to have more people aware of what's happening. And, I just want him to get caught. I want his name out there so anyone else who may come in contact with him knows what kind of person this is, knows his tactics, and any narcissist, any person who is similar to Adrian, who has similar tendencies, who only want to take from people and who offer nothing in return. I don't know where I was going with that, but I just want them all to die. I want him to go to jail. I want him to be caught. If I were sitting in front of Adrian right now, I would tell him that he is honestly the worst person I have ever met. I have never felt the energy that I have felt come from him, from anyone else on this earth. And I have met some really awful people. And there has nothing that has been close to the feeling that he gave me that day of just black, empty, evil. You can feel all I can say is you can feel the black, you can feel the darkness. Like when I was around him in that one moment specifically, it engulfed me. I felt it, and I talked to my friends about this for weeks after, telling them that I have never felt that energy from anybody in my entire life. He is truly evil. I am not just saying that. I have never in my life felt that. He is evil. He is the worst person I have ever met. And the fact that he has done all of these things to all of these women, and he still sits there and says, well, poor me. I'm the victim. I'm the one who's sad. I didn't do anything. I've never done anything awful to anybody. Well, these 41 plus women say otherwise, and you sure as fuck aren't the one telling the truth. I want you, Adrian Vildusea, because I know you're listening to this, I want you to know that you are not going to be able to hide forever. You will meet your maker. You will see all of your karma. This is going to end.
Next week and the week after, I will be introducing both episodes while Courtney interviews true crime cat lawyer and Petals of Support. Part 6, you will hear the entire phone call that we heard a clip in Part 2. And then Courtney will have a discussion with Elise from True Crime Cat Lawyer. And in Part 7, Courtney and Mama D from Petals of Support will be discussing the entire series and showing love and support for these survivors. For our series finale, Part 8, we will have a victim testimony from a Jane Doe who will use the pseudonym Alex, who was assaulted by this person twice when they were a minor.
This completes Part 5 of this multi-part series. We thank everyone for their participation in this, whether they are interviewed or reenacting or even just listening. Please be vigilant.
Thank you for listening to a Nefarious Nightmare podcast. Music used in this podcast was originally composed by Ghost Stories Incorporated and remixed by Ryan RCX Murphy. Please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or on any podcast platform that accepts ratings and reviews. Thank you very much for listening, and as always, don't be a dick and wear deodorant.